Hello, my name's Rufus,
And my name is Elizabeth.
and we're going to talk about talking with voices and how you do this.
Yeah. So we want to support people who want to try and facilitate talking to somebody's voices. So first of all, want to share some ideas about how you can set it up, what we think are important things to think about when you set up a session with somebody to talk with their voices, and then we're going to do a demonstration as well.
In a nutshell, talking with voices is where a facilitator, in this case it's going to be me, asks the voice hearer questions for their voice, and the voice hearer reports what the voice is saying. So I, as a facilitator, get to have an indirect conversation with the voice via the person who's hearing the voice.
And I guess some of the things that are useful about it is that as somebody who hears voices, you might feel less alone with what the voice is saying. Having somebody there asking you questions to ask the voice, it might be the first time for some people that they're actually engaging, listening to what the voice is saying and trying to have a conversation with it, because for many people that can seem quite daunting. Quite a lot of people we meet may know what the voice is saying overall, but may also spend a lot of time just pushing it away, and may only know some of the things the voice is saying. And with a facilitated dialogue like this, you get support as somebody who hears voices to listen more and get some answers about why about why the voice is there or what's important to the voice. So get a bit of information.
And the idea is that it gives people inspiration in how they can carry on having those kind of conversations with their voice. So it's not about trying to make the person dependent on a facilitator to have a conversation with their voice. It's more that as a facilitator we can help that process happen independently of us.
Yeah. And it might be good to have a talk about why the person might like to talk to their voices. For some people, they're very keen to get rid of the voices, and we usually say that we can't promise that, and this approach is more about listening and accepting that the voices are there, and then maybe the relationship will change over time. But asking people what they'd like from talking with the voices. Some people would like to get better at negotiating with the voices, in negotiating maybe how to talk to each other, how to treat each other more respectfully. Some people like to get better at negotiating time, so having set times where you listen to the voice, and then you can get time where the voices won't bother you so much, so maybe you can focus on certain activities that you'd like to do where the voices may be interfering. So people may have different hopes for why it could be useful to talk to the voices.
It can also help understand the rationale for the voice, why it behaves the way it does, and
It can be useful to tell a couple of stories about
yeah.
how talking to a voice has helped them.
Yeah. So, for example, with one person, they had a very bossy voice who was telling them what to do all the time and getting them to do chores and telling them to keep quiet as well and not to go out. And when we had a conversation with the voice, it emerged that the voice had done this from a young age, and that in her childhood it had been useful to keep her head down and not draw attention to herself and be good. So the voice had been protective, and her learning that was helpful to her being more understanding towards her voice, who before that she just thought he was very difficult and objectionable. and another voice hearer, another person who heard voices, had a voice telling them to kill themselves, and from the dialogue it emerged the voice was very vulnerable and didn't want to live, and actually was interested in getting support, emotional support for his hurt feelings. So again, it was helpful to the person to know what the voice was driving this, what seemed very upsetting and aggressive, telling her to kill herself, actually made it more understandable when we asked more questions to the voice about why it wanted her to kill herself.
So, yeah, before you do a session talking with voices, it can be good to talk about the rationale for doing it, what your hopes are. It can be good to tell stories about how other people have experienced, and explaining quite simply what the process is, and also talk about fears and concerns you might have. For me personally, when I first came across the idea of having somebody talk to the voices I hear, I felt quite scared of it. I found it a bit like a scary thing to do, and I particularly remember being afraid of losing control, that the voices would take over and just say whatever they wanted through me. So for me it was very important that the facilitator asked me questions, that I would then ask the voice inside my head, and then the voice would tell me, and then I would tell the facilitator. And I did that for many years before I felt more comfortable letting a voice speak directly through me. So there are two ways you can facilitate a session like this, and sometimes they merge, or it sort of swaps between them naturally, but for some people it's very important that it's indirect or direct. People have their preferences.
So indirect is where I always ask, in this case Elizabeth, can you ask your voice this? And then she asks a question and listens to the answer, says he's saying this or she's saying this. So that's indirect. With direct, it's I might say direct questions to a voice, like how are you today? And Elizabeth hears the words and says them verbatim. I'm fine, thank you. And so that's giving the voice a bit more power, really. So some people are comfortable with that, some people prefer to do this more indirect reporting, and it's very important to check that out, and you've got a bit more control. There's more tendency perhaps to dissociate and the voice talk more freely when you do direct. For some people that's really unpleasant and they don't want that. So we really
some people have
respect that.
Experienced blackouts where they actually don't remember what the voice is saying. The voice has been telling the facilitator all kinds of personal things that may or may not have been the time for that. My own experience is that whether it's direct or indirect, even with indirect, there can be a bit of a memory. You don't. It's like a different state of mind, so you may not remember everything that's being said.
So I tend to write down whatever's said, and then read it back to the person when we debrief after the conversation with the voice, and that helps bring everything together and makes you at the centre of the process, not on the edge of it.
I think for me personally, if I was being if somebody was talking to a voice of mine, I would like to have an agreement in advance that if you notice a voice talking through me, I'd like you to check it with me if that's okay, and to sort of stop, either just check that I'm still there censoring
Yeah.
or in control, or stop the interview and get me back. So personally, that would be my preference. For some people, they don't mind having the voice take over and maybe dissociate a bit. But I would like, if I was to do it, I would want an agreement that the facilitator stops us if they get a sense that a voice is taking over too much.
Yeah.
And check it out with me.
When I'm doing dialoguing with people for the first time, I tend to do indirect, asking the person to ask the voice questions. It just feels like it's a bit more cautious and gives the person a bit more of a central role.
So any other things that are useful to think about or talk to somebody about in the beginning?
We don't want to be trying to talk to a voice that doesn't want to talk. So everyone needs to feel safe with the process.
So you can't force a voice to come to the table.
Yeah.
So even
If you do, it's going to more likely be an unpleasant experience.
and the
with
idea
the voice
is
getting upset and angry.
Yeah, the whole approach is about trying to create more equal and respectful ways of communicating. So if you force somebody to come to a meeting like that, it's already not in tune with the values.
Yeah. So if a voice doesn't want to talk, I would respect that. See if there is a voice that does want to talk, or see if the person can find out if there's anything the voice would like that would help it want to talk.
Yeah. I think it can also be useful to know that voices might, even if a voice is up for being spoken to, having been interviewed, there might be a reaction afterwards. So things might get a bit more tricky for somebody who hears voices afterwards. The voices might like the attention they're getting, they might like to have more, and if somebody whose voice is not used to negotiating boundaries with the voice might get really excited or threatening because things are changing. So it's a different approach to what they're used to. So there can be a reaction afterwards, but knowing that in advance can be very useful.
You need a trusting relationship between the facilitator and the person hearing voices. So it's not something you want to do with somebody you haven't met before or are only going to see a few times. I would suggest often people find it helpful to have people they know also there to help make it safer. We do dialoguing sometimes after the Hearing Voices group, and nearly always somebody else sits in, and that helps to create more safety, I think, more accountability.
You may probably also have spent some meeting up just talking about the experience. What's it like for the person hearing voices to hear these voices? How many voices do they hear? So have more explorative conversations with the person about what's it like to be someone who hears voices before you start looking at what the voice thinks and feels or wants. So it's really trying to keep the person as the focus and not the voices. Yeah. Try and do a brief demonstration.
Yeah, a brief demonstration.
We had one with very simple questions. You wanted to try.
Should we demonstrate indirect?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll demonstrate indirect.
So I'll ask you to ask the voice questions.
Yeah.
I've got sort of...
That's another thing that might be useful, is to talk about the questions you're going to ask the voice in advance, so that both the person and the voice knows what's going to happen.
Before I tell you the questions I've got, see if you want to add any. Have you got an idea of a voice that you'd like to demonstrate this with?
I was thinking either the mother voice or demon,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
haven't really. Yeah. I think we could do it with the mother voice.
Yeah. Okay. The questions I was thinking of asking were, how are you? Have you got any questions from me? But these will be indirect, so I'll be asking you to ask the voices.
Yeah.
Asking how she's feeling. Is there anything she's concerned about? Does she have any advice for you? And then, is there anything else you'd like to say and thank her?
Yeah.
So, does that sound okay? Is there anything
Yeah.
you want me to ask?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, and now often people find it helpful to move chairs to,
Yeah. I can-
but
even when I do.
everyone's different, so
Yeah.
we check it out with the person what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, for me, it's like a slightly different state of mind to be listening intently to the voices. So I do like to either shift my chair or move to another chair just to
Right.
signify that change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So please say hello to Mother Voice from me.
She says hi.
Please say thank you for agreeing to talk with us today.
She says you're welcome.
Could you ask her how she's feeling today?
She says she doesn't want to talk about feelings.
No. She doesn't want to talk about feelings. Okay. Is there anything she's focused on at the moment that's important to her?
She says she's preoccupied with the traveling tomorrow. Getting things organised.
So is that something that's important to you, being organised for travel? Can you ask them,
Yeah.
Mother Voice, that? Can you ask if that's something that's important to her? Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. Is she saying that being prepared and organised is important to her? Doesn't matter if it's travel or doesn't matter what it is. It applies to everything, she says.
So being prepared is
Yeah.
important for everything.
Yeah.
Can you ask her, does she have any advice for you in relation to your travel tomorrow?
And she thinks I should talk it through and maybe write down a plan.
Can you say thanks for that advice?
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything else she would like to say?
No. No. Not right now, no.
Okay, can you thank her from me for talking with us?
Yeah.
And if you could come back to this chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to summarise what I
Yeah.
wrote down, she was sort of friendly at the beginning, saying hello, saying you're welcome when I thanked her. And I find it helpful to be quite respectful to voices and acknowledge that they're making an effort to
Yeah.
communicate and being very courteous. And when I asked
I
her,
found it difficult because I wanted to get into an argument.
all right,
She was very cat. She
right,
was very short. you
right,
know. But it felt like, but that might just be my, my prejudice against her. But she felt very annoyed. It felt like she was very annoyed, and she was just being polite.
right,
So I wanted
yeah,
to argue with her.
yeah,
But so it was helpful just sticking with the
questions.
questions because I can easily get annoyed with her.
She didn't want to talk about feelings.
No.
When I asked her what's important to her at the moment, she talked about you travelling tomorrow, and she wanted you to focus on the plans for that, talk it through,
Yeah.
write it
that's-
down.
Yeah.
That was
More
her.
clarity.
Yeah, lots of clarity, wanting you to have clearer communication
Yeah.
about travelling.
Yeah. Yeah, she said that being prepared and organised was important.
So that may be why she's a bit tense at the moment, and you're travelling tomorrow. Didn't want to suffer the foolish small talk at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But she didn't have anything else to say,
No.
and so that's her advice.
Yeah.
Something for you to think about. So you have a choice whether to take that on or not. It's not that we always do what the voices say.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. How do you feel?
A bit more anxious about travelling. Yeah.
Right. So it's something to work with. She's given you a bit of some work to do
Yeah.
with that anxiety.
Yeah. But like I say, it's also useful to have you guiding the conversation so I didn't get sidetracked into the usual arguments that can happen
Yeah.
between me and her. Well, thank you. Is there anything else we want to say about? I guess for me, something I've found useful is that when you do the interviewing, you don't try and change the voice. You don't try and analyse. You don't try and ask, deeper questions about.
Right. Yeah.
That you sort of try and just almost a journalistic approach where you try and gather information about.
They're very curious, very open-minded,
Yeah.
non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Just
And not offer necessarily loads of analysis and
Yeah.
interpretation of what's going on.
No.
You may be able to do that a bit in the debrief
yeah,
when you talk about it afterwards.
yeah. Just like you wouldn't do with somebody you just met.
Yeah.
You wouldn't start deeply analysing what they're saying.
Mm.
You treat the voice just as someone saying
Yeah.
with a lot of respect and
Yeah.
trying to learn their language really
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
find some common ground.
I think that thing about once you start practicing communication, you can build up some shared language about things because the voice might not have a very big vocabulary or very nuanced way of talking about things. So you can help this way of working can help create shared language for things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I slipped up, went into direct rather than indirect because I think the last time we demonstrated we did direct, so I just kind of slipped
And
back
it can
into
be
it.
tricky. It can
Yeah.
be tricky, and when you, even if I said I want to do indirect, I can slip up as well and start talking
Yeah,
as the voice, and then as a facilitator, I think it happens on both sides, and just helping each other to try and stay on track and checking it out as well if it's what's okay. That's it, isn't it?
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.